The galaxy was vast, filled with countless planets, each home to different species, cultures, and civilizations. One of the most beautiful of these worlds was Zithera, a planet where peace and art flourished. The Illyrians, the dominant species of the planet, were beings of grace and elegance. Their civilization had never known war, their lands untouched by conflict. The Illyrians had perfected the art of beauty and harmony, living in a world where everything, from the smallest flower to the tallest building, was created to reflect their love for art and balance. Lucas had heard stories about the Illyrians, but nothing could prepare him for what he saw when his ship first touched down on Zithera. A human soldier, he had been sent here on a peacekeeping mission, but the moment he stepped off the ship, his senses were overwhelmed by the beauty of this alien world. The air felt different, almost alive with a kind of gentle energy that was impossible to describe. The sky above was a brilliant shade of blue, and the land was covered with lush green fields and sparkling rivers. The architecture of the Illyrian city gleamed, made of marble and precious stones that reflected the sun's light in ways Lucas had never seen before. He had come here to ensure peace, to represent humanity's commitment to maintaining friendly relations with the Illyrians. But in truth, Lucas had no idea what he would face. No one had prepared him for the Illyrian queen. Her name was Amara. When Lucas first saw her, he froze. She stood in the grand hall of the palace, her presence commanding attention without the need for any words. Amara was beautiful, but not in a way that could be described in simple terms. Her features were delicate, yet strong. Her skin glowed like porcelain, and her eyes were a deep, almost mesmerizing shade of violet. She moved with the elegance of someone who had been trained in the finest of dances, every step graceful, every gesture purposeful. Her long, dark hair flowed behind her, and as she turned to face him, her gaze met his. For a moment, Lucas couldn't speak. He wasn't used to this. He was a soldier, trained to remain calm and composed no matter the situation. But Amara was, unlike anything he had ever encountered. There was something about her that made his heart race and his thoughts scatter. She was the queen, a ruler of a peaceful and powerful people, and yet in that moment she looked at him as if she were seeing a simple man, not a soldier of Earth. "Welcome, human." Her voice was soft, but it held a certain command. "I hope your journey was pleasant." Lucas nodded, still unable to form words. His throat felt dry. "It was an honor to arrive, Your Majesty," he finally managed, his voice thick with awe. Amara smiled, a small, shy smile that took Lucas completely by surprise. He had expected her to be cold, distant. After all, she was a queen, and queens were supposed to be stern, unapproachable. But Amara was different. She exuded warmth, and there was a kindness in her smile that made Lucas feel at ease, despite the strangeness of the situation. "Please, call me Amara," she said gently, as if reading his thoughts. "There is no need for formalities between us. You are a guest on Zithera. We treat our guests with the utmost respect." For the next few hours, Lucas followed Amara through the palace, walking through its grand halls and gardens. She explained the Illyrian culture to him, speaking about their love for art, music, and beauty. The Illyrians believed that peace was the highest form of art, and they had spent centuries perfecting the balance between their people and nature. Their society was built on respect, understanding, and compassion. They had no need for weapons or conflict. Their greatest strength was their ability to live in harmony with each other and the world around them. As they walked, Lucas found himself captivated not just by the beauty of the palace, but by Amara herself. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and kind-hearted. Yet there was a quiet strength to her that Lucas couldn't quite place. It wasn't arrogance, but something deeper. A sense of responsibility, perhaps, or a burden she carried as the ruler of her people. Amara, in turn, seemed intrigued by Lucas. She had met many diplomats and leaders from other planets, but none of them had the raw, genuine quality that Lucas possessed. He was different from the Illyrians, of course. He was human, a species, known for their bravery and determination, but also for their flaws. He didn't hide behind elegance or refinement. He spoke plainly, and his actions were driven by an earnest desire to help. He wasn't here to seek power or influence. He was here for one simple reason: peace. As the day wore on, Lucas began to feel a connection with Amara, a bond that was hard to define. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, although that was undeniable. It was her sincerity, her quiet strength, and the way she looked at him with such curiosity. He had seen many people in his life, but none who had made him feel this way. None who had made him forget everything else and focus entirely on the moment they were sharing. At dinner that evening, the atmosphere was calm and peaceful. The Illyrian chefs had prepared a magnificent meal filled with fresh fruits and exotic dishes Lucas had never seen before. The table was set with fine crystal and silverware, and the air was filled with the soft hum of music played by a group of Illyrian musicians in the corner. Lucas could barely keep his focus on the meal, his thoughts drifting to the woman seated across from him. Amara seemed to notice his distraction and smiled again, this time more knowingly. "You seem far away, Lucas," she said softly. "Is there something on your mind?" Lucas looked up, startled. He had been so caught up in his thoughts that he hadn't realized he had been staring at her. He quickly cleared his throat, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I've never met someone like you before." Amara raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Someone like me?" He nodded. "Yes. You're different, in a good way." For a moment there was a pause between them, a silence that felt comfortable despite the words left unspoken. Amara's smile softened, and she looked down at her plate, as if thinking over his words. Then, looking back up at him, she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Perhaps we are more alike than you think, Lucas." Lucas felt a strange warmth fill his chest at her words. He wasn't sure what it meant, but he was beginning to understand that this mission was going to be more than just about peacekeeping. He was beginning to realize that there was something more between him and Amara, something that couldn't be explained in words, something deeper than either of them could have expected. As the night went on, the two of them spoke less and less, about diplomacy and more about their lives. Amara told Lucas about her childhood, her struggles as a ruler, and the weight of leadership that she carried every day. Lucas, in turn, shared stories of Earth, of his family, and of his experiences as a soldier. But through it all, one thought remained constant in Lucas's mind. He couldn't stop thinking about her. After a few days on Zithera, Lucas found himself getting more comfortable. The Illyrians, despite their advanced technology and quiet elegance, were welcoming. It wasn't long before he had settled into a routine, spending much of his time with Amara. What had started as a diplomatic mission was slowly turning into something more personal, something Lucas couldn't quite understand yet. Amara seemed to enjoy his company as well, often inviting him to join her for walks in the royal gardens or meals in the palace. She would always ask questions about Earth, eager to learn about his home planet, its cultures, and most of all, humanity itself. Lucas, in return, would ask her about the Illyrians and their peaceful way of life. He couldn't help but admire their society, a world where beauty, art, and harmony were not just ideals, but the foundation of every action, every decision. One afternoon, as they walked along a crystal-clear river that flowed through the palace grounds, Amara paused, looking at Lucas with a thoughtful expression. The sun cast a warm golden glow over everything, making the scene feel almost unreal. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves shimmering in the light. It was a perfect day, the kind of day Lucas had only ever seen in postcards. "Lucas," Amara said, her voice soft, yet carrying an edge of curiosity. "You've been here for several days now. I know this isn't what you expected. The Illyrians are a peaceful people, but I wonder—" She paused, as if unsure how to continue. Lucas turned to face her. "What do you wonder?" She smiled, a small, shy smile that Lucas couldn't help but find endearing. "I wonder if you found this world to be strange, different, perhaps." Lucas thought about her question for a moment. He had certainly never been to a place like this before. Everything on Scythera felt so different from Earth. The culture, the people, the environment. It was all peaceful, balanced, and serene. But strange? No, not strange. It was beautiful. It was mesmerizing. And it was starting to feel like a home of sorts. "It's not strange," he said finally. "It's just new. Different from what I know, but in a good way. It's hard to explain." Amara nodded as though she had been expecting that answer. "I understand. For us, this world is everything. We have no war, no conflict. Our people live in harmony with the land and with each other. I know that peace is something rare in the galaxy, but it is what we have built here, and we value it deeply." Lucas felt a deep respect for her words. He had seen war, destruction, and loss in his own life. But what Amara spoke of seemed impossible. Peace, without compromise, without the need for defense or fear. It was a concept he had never fully understood until now. "You've built something truly remarkable," Lucas said sincerely. "I can see why you value it so much." Amara smiled at him, and for a brief moment, Lucas could have sworn that the air between them shifted, becoming warmer, more intimate. It wasn't the type of warmth one would expect from a ruler, but something much gentler. Something that made his heart race a little faster. As they continued walking, Amara stopped in front of a large stone archway covered with ivy. The path beyond it led to a secluded area of the palace grounds, a small garden with flowers Lucas had never seen before, their petals glowing faintly in the dimming light of the afternoon. "I'd like to show you something," Amara said, her voice soft and inviting. Without waiting for his response, she led him through the archway and into the garden. The flowers were arranged in perfect harmony, each one placed with care, creating a calming atmosphere. The sound of a small fountain trickled in the background, adding to the peaceful ambiance. Amara's presence seemed to fill the space, her aura blending with the surroundings, creating a sense of tranquility that Lucas couldn't help but be drawn to. "This is one of my favorite places," Amara said, looking around the garden with a sense of pride. "It's where I come when I need peace, when the weight of ruling becomes too much to bear." Lucas looked around, mesmerized by the beauty of the garden. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. He could feel the weight of the history and effort that had been put into creating this space. He could sense that this was a part of Amara, a reflection of her inner world. "It's beautiful," Lucas said, his voice filled with awe. "It feels like a place where time slows down." Amara smiled at him, her eyes softening. "That's the purpose. To slow down, to reflect, to reconnect with what truly matters." Lucas felt a sudden urge to ask her more questions about her life, about her role as queen, about the burdens she carried, about her dreams. But before he could speak, Amara turned toward him, her expression suddenly serious. "Lucas," she said softly, "I have a request. I would like you to stay here longer as my guest. I know your mission was only supposed to be for a short time, but I feel that we have only just begun to understand each other, and there is so much I wish to show you about Scythera, about my people." Lucas was caught off guard. He had come to Zithera for a specific purpose, to ensure peace and understanding between humanity and the Illyrians. He had never expected to be invited to stay longer. But as he looked at Amara, he realized that his mission had become something much more than just diplomacy. He had come to admire her, her beauty, her intelligence, and her strength. But there was something deeper, something unspoken, that connected them. And he found himself wanting to know more about this world, about her, and about what they could become together. "I would be honored to stay," Lucas said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'll gladly extend my visit, Amara. There's so much more I want to learn from you." Amara's smile widened, a rare, genuine smile that lit up her face. "Thank you, Lucas. I'm glad to hear that." As they walked back through the garden, the air between them felt lighter, more open. Amara seemed more relaxed, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was no longer just the queen. She was Amara, a woman who sought connection, understanding, and companionship. For Lucas, that moment felt like the beginning of something new. He had come to Zithera to ensure peace, but he was starting to realize that the true peace he had found was in the unexpected friendship and bond forming between him and Amara. The days on Zithera seemed to pass in a dreamlike blur. Lucas had grown accustomed to the calm, peaceful rhythms of the Illyrian way of life. But the more time he spent with Amara, the more he understood that her peaceful world was fragile, and the threats against it were very real. One evening, after another peaceful walk through the palace gardens, Amara's expression shifted. For the first time since Lucas had met her, there was a hint of worry in her eyes, a vulnerability that had been hidden beneath her calm exterior. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow across the sky, and the stars were beginning to twinkle above. "Lucas, there is something I need to tell you," Amara said, her voice softer than usual. "Something that has been weighing on my heart." Lucas, sensing the change in her tone, stepped closer to her. "What is it, Amara?" She took a deep breath, looking out over the royal gardens, her gaze distant. "I have received troubling news. A warlord from a neighboring planet, Grathar, has been amassing an army. He seeks to conquer Zithera and use our planet for its resources. He believes that our people are weak, that we are unprepared for conflict, and he is determined to take what we have built." Lucas felt a sudden chill run through him. The peaceful world he had grown to love was now under threat, and it was the kind of threat he was all too familiar with. He had seen it before on Earth, when peace was taken for granted, when enemies lurked in the shadows waiting for a moment of weakness to strike. Amara turned to face him, her eyes serious and filled with concern. "My people are not warriors. Lucas, we do not fight wars. We are artists, philosophers, healers. We have no military. Our strength is in our unity and our ability to create beauty. But Grathar's forces are ruthless, and I fear that our way of life is at risk." Lucas could see the weight of her words, the fear behind her calm facade. He had never seen her so vulnerable, and it stirred something deep within him. He had come to this planet to help, to represent humanity in peace. But now he could see that Zithera's peace was slipping away, and if something wasn't done, everything would be lost. "You don't have to face this alone," Lucas said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "I'm here to help. You've shown me what makes Zithera special, how beautiful it is, how peaceful it can be. I won't stand by and let it fall to a tyrant like Grathar." Amara looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and hesitation in her eyes. "I cannot ask you to fight, Lucas. You are not one of us. You are human, and this is not your war. I would never want to put you in danger." But Lucas could see the conflict in her eyes. She was trying to protect him, trying to keep him safe, But she was also desperate. Desperate for a solution. For someone to take action, because she knew that peace alone wouldn't save them now. "You don't have to ask," Lucas replied firmly. "I'm not going to sit back while someone threatens everything you've worked so hard to build. You need help, and I'm here to give it." Amara's eyes softened, and she stepped closer to him. "But how? My people have never fought a war. We don't have the resources, the experience, the training. How can we possibly stand up to an army like Grathar's?" Lucas took a deep breath, thinking for a moment. He knew what needed to be done. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about preparation, strategy, and ensuring that the Illyrians had the strength to protect themselves. They didn't need to be soldiers. They needed to be strong in their own way, using what they had to defend their world. "I can train them," Lucas said. "I've seen wars. I've fought in battles. I know how to train soldiers, how to teach people to defend themselves. It won't be easy, and it will take time, but we can do it. You don't have to fight this war alone." Amara's expression shifted again, this time a mix of uncertainty and hope. "But I am the queen. If I agree to this, I will be asking my people to change everything, to become something they are not. They have never known violence, never known the fear of war. It will be difficult for them." "I know," Lucas said, his tone softening. "But sometimes, when the threat is real, we have to do things we never imagined we would. And you don't have to do it alone. You have allies now. You have me." Amara looked into his eyes, searching his face for any sign of doubt, but found none. Lucas was committed. She could see that. And perhaps for the first time she realized that she had to make a choice, not just as a ruler, but as someone who cared deeply for her people. The choice was hers, and the consequences would be far-reaching. "I'll need to speak with the council," she said, her voice steady now. "But I believe you are right. If we do nothing, we will lose everything. I won't let Zithara fall. I won't let my people be enslaved." Lucas nodded. "I'll be here, whenever you're ready." The next few days were filled with meetings, discussions, and tense moments as Amara gathered her council to discuss the looming threat of Grathar's invasion. The Illyrians were hesitant at first, unsure of how to proceed, but Amara's leadership and Lucas's calm assurance slowly convinced them. It was clear that they could not sit idly by and wait for the enemy to arrive. They had to take action. As the decision was made to train the Illyrian soldiers, Lucas began working with Amara and a small group of volunteers, preparing them for what lay ahead. It wasn't easy. The Illyrians were not naturally inclined toward combat, and many struggled to adapt to the harsh reality of war. But Lucas was patient, teaching them how to defend themselves, how to fight if they had to. Amara was with them every step of the way. Though she had never held a weapon before, she threw herself into the training with determination, her desire to protect her people outweighing her doubts. In the quiet moments, when the training sessions ended and the sun dipped below the horizon, Lucas and Amara would sit together in the royal gardens, speaking about the future and what it would hold for Zithara. And in those moments, Lucas knew one thing for sure. He would stand by her side no matter what came next. Together, they would face whatever dangers lay ahead, and he would not let her face them alone. "You said," the sound of clashing swords echoed across the training grounds, mingling with the rhythmic hum of Illyrian war drums that had been brought in as part of their preparation. It was a strange sight, one that Lucas never imagined would happen on Zithara. The peaceful people of this planet, known for their artistry and gentle way of life, were now learning to fight, to defend their home from a looming threat that none of them had ever anticipated. Lucas stood at the front of the group, his eyes scanning the Illyrians who were struggling to learn basic combat techniques. Their natural grace was evident in their movements, but the awkwardness of their unfamiliarity with weapons and tactics was clear. Their usual elegance was replaced by hesitation, their soft hands unsure of how to grip a sword properly. Amara stood among them, her posture straight, her face set with determination. She had insisted on participating in every training session, despite her status as queen. The other Illyrians had initially been hesitant to see their ruler take part in such physical tasks, but Amara had shown them all that true leadership wasn't just about giving orders, it was about standing alongside them, sharing the burden. Lucas admired her resolve. She had started to adapt to the training, though her movements were still a bit stiff, but he could see the fire in her eyes. She wanted to protect her people, no matter the cost. "Focus on your stance," Lucas called out to the group, his voice firm but encouraging. "Your feet need to be grounded, your body balanced. If you don't have control, you'll lose your footing when the time comes to fight." One of the Illyrians, a young woman named Nera, wobbled slightly as she raised her sword, a glint of frustration crossing her face. Lucas approached her, offering a few words of advice. "Try to bend your knees slightly. Keep your weight centered. It will help you stay steady." Nera nodded, adjusting her stance. She swung the sword again, this time with more confidence. While she was far from perfect, Lucas could see improvement. Slowly but surely, the Illyrians were learning. It was a difficult journey, but they were beginning to understand that they couldn't rely on their beauty, their culture, or their peace alone to protect them. They needed strength, inner strength, and it was Lucas's job to teach them that. Amara watched from the sidelines, her brow furrowed as she studied the practice. Her heart ached for her people. These were not warriors, and the thought of them being thrust into battle weighed heavily on her. But she also knew the truth. If Scythera was to survive, they would need to become something they never thought they could be: fighters. She turned to Lucas, her voice low. "Are they ready?" Lucas paused for a moment, watching the group. The first few days had been hard. There were many moments of doubt, and some Illyrians even considered quitting. But now they had come a long way. Their bodies were no longer as stiff, their movements more fluid. Their confidence was growing. "They're getting there," he said, his tone thoughtful. "They're not soldiers yet, but they're learning to hold their ground. They're becoming more focused, more determined." Amara looked out at her people, who were now practicing in pairs, sparring gently under Lucas's supervision. "I wish it didn't have to be this way," she said softly. "I wish we didn't have to fight." Lucas understood the weight of her words. He had been a soldier for much of his life, and the idea of violence was something he had always tried to avoid. But sometimes there was no other choice. He didn't want to see Scythera torn apart, and he didn't want to see Amara lose everything she had worked so hard to build. "I know," Lucas replied, his voice calm. "None of us want to fight, but we fight to protect what matters. And your people, they matter." Amara gave him a small, appreciative smile. "I'm grateful for your help, Lucas. I'm grateful for everything you've done for us." Lucas met her gaze, his heart unexpectedly heavy. He had been here to represent Earth's interest in a peaceful alliance, but now he had become so much more than just a diplomat. He had become a protector, someone who would stand beside Amara and her people, no matter the cost. "Just doing my job," he said, but there was something in his tone that spoke more of sincerity than obligation. He would protect her. He would protect them all. The days that followed were filled with intense training. Lucas pushed the Illyrians to their limits, testing their strength, their endurance, and their resolve. It was hard work. Some of them struggled, unable to keep up with the rigorous demands of combat training. But others, like Nera, began to show real promise. She was a natural with a bow, her aim accurate and steady. Another Illyrian, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Valen, had shown impressive strength in hand-to-hand combat, able to hold his own, even against the more experienced Lucas. Amara, too, had grown stronger, though her training was less focused on combat and more on leadership. She had to learn to make decisions quickly, to lead with authority even in the face of fear. It was difficult for her, but she took each challenge in stride, her respect for Lucas growing with each passing day. One evening, after another long day of training, Lucas and Amara found themselves alone in the royal garden once again. The tension of the day had left them both weary, but there was a quiet understanding between them, a bond that had only grown, stronger over time. "Do you ever wonder why this happened?" Amara asked, her voice soft, as she looked up at the stars. "Why we were forced into this situation? Why my people have to change so drastically?" Lucas sat beside her, his gaze following hers to the sky. "I think sometimes we don't get to choose the battles we face. Life just brings them to us, and all we can do is choose how we fight them. I think that's what you're doing, choosing to fight for your people." Amara was silent for a moment, contemplating his words. "I never imagined I'd be in this position. I never imagined that I'd have to ask my people to change everything they've ever known. But I can't let Zithara fall. I won't let my people become slaves to Grathar." Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture of support. "You're doing the right thing, Amara. You're leading them with strength and courage, and they're following you because they believe in you." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the moonlight. "I couldn't do this without you, Lucas. I owe you more than I can ever say." He smiled, though the weight of their situation still hung heavy in his heart. "You don't owe me anything. We're in this together." In that moment, Lucas realized something that had been growing in his heart for days. His commitment to Amara and her people was no longer just a duty, it was personal. He wasn't just protecting Zithara for the sake of peace, he was protecting it because he believed in what they had, in the strength and resilience of the Illyrians, and he believed in Amara. The war was coming, and no one knew how it would end. But Lucas knew one thing for sure. He would fight beside her, and together, they would protect everything they had worked so hard to build. And no matter the outcome, he would not let her face it alone. The day had come. The threat that had loomed over Zithara for so long was now at their doorstep. Grathar, the ruthless warlord who sought to conquer their peaceful world, had arrived with his army. Lucas stood on the edge of the royal palaces, high walls looking out over the vast landscape. The sound of distant battle horns filled the air, and the faint hum of Grathar's ships could be heard in the distance. This was no longer a training exercise. This was real. Zithara was under attack. Lucas's heart raced. He had seen battles before, fought in wars that had torn entire cities apart, but nothing compared to the weight of this moment. He was fighting, not for his own survival, but for a world he had come to love, and for a people who had embraced him as one of their own. And above all, he was fighting for Amara, the Illyrian queen who had shown him kindness, who had trusted him to help her. People who had become someone he couldn't imagine leaving behind. Behind him, Amara stood with the council. She had not been idle during the preparations. She had worked tirelessly with Lucas, making sure her people were ready, training them to fight for the survival of their world. She had led her people through moments of fear, doubt, and confusion, but now, as the sound of battle drew nearer, she stood taller than ever. This was her kingdom, and she would protect it with everything she had. "Lucas," Amara said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Are they ready?" Lucas turned to her. Her expression was calm, but he could see the worry in her eyes, the worry of a queen who had never wanted to lead her people into war. But now she had no choice. "They're ready," he said, his voice confident. "They may not be soldiers yet, but they've learned what they need to. They've trained hard, and they'll fight with everything they have." Amara nodded, though there was still a sense of uncertainty in her eyes. "I never wanted this. I never wanted my people to know what war is like." Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know, but sometimes peace requires a fight, and you're not alone in this. We'll face it together." The words felt like a promise, one that resonated in the silence between them. They were no longer just allies. They were partners, bound by their shared desire to protect the people they cared about. And as the sounds of the advancing army grew louder, they both knew the time for talking was over. The battle was upon them. The Illyrian forces gathered in the palace courtyard, ready for the first line of defense. They had prepared as best as they could, but there was no telling how they would fare against Grathar's seasoned army. Lucas walked among them, offering words of encouragement, checking the weapons and armor that had been hastily put together. The Illyrians were not fighters by nature, but they were determined, and that, Lucas knew, would make all the difference. Amara walked among them as well, offering her presence as a sign of strength. She had shed her royal garments, dressed in simple armor that would help her move quickly and efficiently. She wasn't leading from behind. She was leading from the front, standing side by side with her people. Her calm, collected demeanor gave them a sense of assurance, and her unwavering confidence helped ease their fears. Lucas approached Amara as the troops prepared to march to the front lines. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You've done everything you can. Let the soldiers fight." Amara met his gaze. "I am the queen of Zithara. I cannot stand behind my people and let them fight without me. This is my responsibility." Lucas wanted to argue, to tell her that she didn't need to put herself in danger, but he knew it would be useless. This was who she was. She wasn't just a queen. She was a leader, someone who would sacrifice everything to protect her world. "Just be careful," he said, his voice soft but filled with concern. "I will," she promised. Together, they led the Illyrian forces to the outskirts of the palace, where the battle was already beginning. The sky above was darkening, filled with the smoke of battle and the rumble of approaching warships. The enemy forces were coming, and Zithara's fate would be decided in the next few hours. The first clash of the battle was chaotic. Grathar's army, a mix of heavily armored soldiers and brutal war machines, surged forward, intent on breaking through the Illyrian defenses. The Illyrians, despite their lack of military experience, fought with everything they had. Lucas fought alongside them, his years of experience in battle coming to the forefront as he led the defense. He moved quickly, directing the troops, helping them stay focused and making sure they worked together. Amara, though less experienced in combat, fought fiercely. She moved with purpose, her sword flashing as she defended her people. It wasn't just about protecting herself or the palace. It was about protecting the way of life that the Illyrians had spent centuries building. And with every swing of her sword, she felt the weight of her people's hopes resting on her shoulders. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that the Illyrians were at a disadvantage. The enemy forces were relentless, and their strength was overwhelming. For every Illyrian who fought with courage, there were more Grathar soldiers advancing, pushing the line back. Lucas saw the tension on Amara's face as she fought, the strain beginning to show in her movements. She was exhausted, and it wasn't just from the physical toll of the battle. It was the weight of leadership, the constant pressure of knowing that the lives of her people were in her hands. "Amara!" Lucas called out as he fought his way toward her. "We need to fall back. We can't hold them off like this." But Amara shook her head. "We fight until the end. We don't give up." The resolve in her voice was undeniable, but Lucas knew they were running out of time. They needed a plan, something that could turn the tide of the battle. The Illyrians had trained hard, but they lacked the weapons and the experience to defeat an army as large and well-equipped as Grathar's. Then, in the chaos of the battle, Lucas saw an opportunity. The war machines that Grathar's army had, brought with them, were formidable, but they were slow, cumbersome, and vulnerable. If they could destroy the machines, they would cripple Grathar's forces. "Amara!" Lucas shouted again. "We need to target the war machines. If we can take them down, we can win this." Amara's eyes met his, and for a moment there was a brief understanding between them. She nodded, her expression filled with determination. "I'll lead the charge," she said. "You help me." Lucas couldn't argue with her decision. Together, they rallied a small group of Illyrians and led a daring assault on the war machines. It wasn't easy, but with Lucas's strategy and Amara's leadership, they managed to breach the enemy's defenses, attacking the machines one by one. Explosions rocked the battlefield as the war machines were destroyed, and Grathar's forces faltered. The tide of battle had shifted, but as the battle raged on, Lucas knew that the outcome was far from certain. There was still much to be done, and the enemy forces were still a threat. But with Amara by his side, he believed they could succeed. Together they would fight for Scythera, and they would protect everything they had worked so hard to build. The battle had stretched late into the night. The sounds of clashing weapons and the roar of explosions slowly faded as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. The once pristine land of Scythera was now scarred by the violence that had invaded it. The cost of peace had been heavy, but the Illyrians had fought with everything they had, and in the end, they had emerged victorious. Grathar's forces had been driven back, their war machines destroyed, and their army broken. Lucas stood at the edge of the battlefield, surveying the aftermath. His heart was heavy, but there was a sense of relief that washed over him. Scythera had been saved, and the enemy had been defeated. Yet the land was scarred, the air thick with smoke from the fires that had burned during the battle. The Illyrians had shown bravery beyond anyone's expectations, but they had paid a price. Amara approached him, her armor battered but her expression one of quiet strength. She had fought hard, leading her people with the courage of a true queen. Her once glistening armor was now dulled, stained by the dirt and sweat of battle, but she walked with the same grace she had shown before the war began. "You did it, Amara," Lucas said softly. "You saved Scythera, you and your people." Amara looked around at the battlefield, her eyes scanning the damaged landscape. There were bodies to bury, injuries to tend to, and countless tasks that would take weeks to complete. But the most important thing was that they had won. Scythera was safe, and her people could begin to rebuild. "We did it together," Amara replied. "My people fought with everything they had. I couldn't have done it alone." Lucas nodded, his gaze never leaving her. He had never expected to find himself in this situation, fighting not for his own planet, but for one he had come to love. He had come to Scythera as a diplomat, but in the end, he had become a protector, a warrior, and something much more. He had become part of the fabric of this world, and with that, he had become part of Amara's world. The quiet between them stretched for a moment, both of them taking in the gravity of what they had just accomplished. The weight of their actions, the lives lost, and the future they had fought to protect hung in the air. "You know," Amara said after a pause, her voice almost wistful, "when I first met you, I had no idea what to expect. You were just a human soldier from Earth, far from home. And now you're part of something much bigger than yourself. You've helped me save my people." Lucas turned to face her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I didn't do it for the title. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I believed in you, Amara. And I believe in Scythera, in your people. You've shown me something I never thought I'd see. True peace. And I'll stand by you for as long as I'm needed." Amara smiled at him, a soft, genuine smile that made Lucas's heart swell. "And I'll stand by you, Lucas. You've become more than just an ally. You're family now." Lucas felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He had never felt more at home than he did here, standing beside Amara, knowing that they had fought together to protect her world. There was no greater honor, no greater sense of belonging than this. As the hours passed and the smoke began to clear, the Illyrians started to gather their wounded, tending to their fallen comrades and helping those who were injured. The palace was no longer just a symbol of their culture. It had become the center of their strength, their resolve. Amara had led them through a trial by fire, and now it was time to rebuild. The Illyrians had always valued art, beauty, and harmony, but they had learned that sometimes strength was needed to protect those things. Their peaceful world had been shaken, but in the process, they had discovered something invaluable, the resilience of their spirit. They were no longer just artists and philosophers. They were warriors, too, and they had proven it in the face of a merciless enemy. As the days turned into weeks, the recovery began. The destruction was vast, but Amara and Lucas worked side by side with the Illyrians to rebuild their homes and restore the balance that had once existed. The once scarred land was slowly healed, and with it, the hearts of the Illyrians began to heal as well. They had fought, and now they could rebuild with a new sense of purpose. The bond between Amara and Lucas grew stronger with each passing day. There were quiet moments when they sat together, reflecting on the battle they had fought and the future they now had to face. There was still much to be done, and the scars of war would never completely fade. But they had each other, and that gave them hope. One evening, as the sun set over the palace, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Lucas and Amara stood together on the balcony. The world below them was peaceful once again, the gentle hum of the planet's natural rhythms returning to the air. "I never thought I'd find peace in a world like this," Lucas said, his voice soft. "I came here thinking I was just a soldier, but I found something much more." Amara turned to him, her gaze warm and filled with understanding. "You found a home," she said simply. Lucas nodded. He had found a home, not just in Scythera, but with Amara. Her people had accepted him, and in turn, he had accepted them. There was a place for him here, not as a soldier, but as part of the Illyrian family. The wind stirred gently around them as they stood in silence, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, and there were still challenges to face, still dangers to overcome. But for the first time since arriving on Scythera, Lucas felt truly at peace. "We have a future to build," Amara said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "We'll build it together," Lucas replied, his hand finding hers in the soft evening light. And in that moment, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. Scythera had been saved, but the true battle was just beginning. Together they would shape a future of peace, harmony, and strength, not just for Scythera, but for the galaxy itself,